I'm Indy Neidell.
And I'm Spartacus Olsson.
And this is Across the Airwaves, where we read out some of your most interesting, informative, or even controversial comments and letters.
It's been a while since we shared comments in this format, and we've made a lot of videos since last.
And all of this new content has meant a lot of new comments, which maybe isn't so fun for Ian, our community manager, but which really has gotten our attention.
And we want to bring some of them to the wider community. Indy also has a very interesting letter that a community member has alerted him to. Let's get started.
Okay, so one of our brigadiers in the TimeGhost army, Chewbacca, writes... Chewbacca, yeah, well, he's a cool guy. I mean, we met him in real life. He's actually called Mark, and it's him and Flurke too, I bet, who sent this in. Okay, Chewbacca, who is an actual pilot in real life, wants to share the story of the time a Texas major pulled General George Patton's pilot's license. Chewie would have just pulled his arms out of the socket, but that is not how aviation worked in World War II. Parentheses, not sure if the joke works. If anyone can do it, it is Indy and team. Of course it works, okay? Hey, I wonder if, when Hitler was ranting about something like, and Kukler had a problem with it, did Zeitzler ever just turn to Kukler and be like, let the Wookiee win? Anyhow, I want to start with the interesting letter Sparty mentioned, a photo of which Chewbacca sent to us. It's from Brigadier General George Patton to Major Schaff, May 12, 1942. Dear Major Schaff, I sincerely trust you will accept my apology for the unbecoming conduct and harsh language on my part when you, as the Airways engineer and station manager CAA, pulled my pilot's license and grounded me at Blythe earlier this year. As a field commander and leader of soldiers, I failed in my responsibility to always file a flight plan with the CAA station manager when flying to and from the field and to my home in Pasadena. I appreciate your kindness in having my license reinstated and making things right with my commanding officer, Lieutenant General DeWitt. I also want to express my appreciation and thank you for all your time and effort in instructing me in the use of the new ILS and VHF systems which you and your staff installed at Blythe. Again, my sincere appreciation for all you have done on my behalf as I strive to be a good leader and commander to my officers and men. Most sincerely, G.S. Patton Jr., Brigadier General, U.S. Army Commanding. That is very interesting. Chewbacca took a jet aerobatics course on a L-29 Czech Delfin jet at www.jetwarbird.com. And after that, he stopped at the General Patton Memorial Museum in Chiriaco Summit, California. Among the many exhibits on the old training grounds, he saw the original letter. Back during the war, air traffic was already standardized, and Patton's harsh language was one reason for losing his license, as pilots should not waste radio waves with unnecessary talk, and definitely not with profanity, which just gets people riled up and becomes a safety hazard. The second reason is even worse, though. He did not file a flight plan from his home in Pasadena to Blythe, California. Flight plans are essential for safety, and there's almost nothing but a very big, nasty desert between Pasadena. A flight plan ensures that search and rescue is activated if you don't arrive on time. Maybe we have to thank the Texas Major for not letting Patton get himself killed. Also, Patton thanks the Major for being trained on the newly installed ILS and VHF systems. I do fly warbirds now and then. Not me, he does. But I'm not very familiar with World War II ILS systems. But anyway, ILS allows planes to conduct landings in low visibility and flying via radio beams to the airport. It seems Patton flaunted the rules here too. As for today, driving through or flying over the desert is not wise without supplies. The park rangers will tell you to take supplies of water and food, as people can and do die there. Finally, the desert training grounds were huge. They stretched all the way from Blythe to Searchlight, Nevada. Most Europeans like me, Wookiees are European, okay, tend to underestimate the U.S. distances. For example, LA to Santa Fe, New Mexico is the same distance as Amsterdam to well into Ukraine, just saying. Mark or Chewbacca, I don't really have much to add about that, except that I did not know this story before. I'm guessing most of you didn't either, so big thanks, Chewbacca, for bringing it to our attention. That's an interesting one, Sparty, isn't it?
It's always fun to hear about how Patton is being an ass.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Under our video on the Polish Armed Forces in Exile, Dexify fills us in on the history of Squadron 303. Speaking of Squadron 303, it's actually a continuation of 7th Air Squadron that fought in the Polish Bolshevik War in 1919 and 20. 7th Squadron was a home for American pilots who felt obligated to fight for Poles due to many Poles, including Tadeusz Kościuszko and Kazimierz Pulaski, fighting for American independence and being instrumental to American victory. They simply felt incredible gratitude and considered that to be the right thing to do. They kept their ranks from the American Army, but fought wearing Polish uniforms. Fun fact, one of the pilots was Marion C. Cooper, director of King Kong. That's a fun fact. 20 years later, 303 fought for Britain, a chain of warriors fighting for safety of others. If you actually look at the badges of both 7th Squadron and 303, it's basically the same. 3031 is basically an updated version of 7th Squadron badge. 13 stars of American founder states with white-red stripes in the background, and Kościuszko's four-cornered hat with two sides from Kościuszko Scythemen in the middle. Kościuszko has multiple monuments in America, including one in the presidential garden at the White House. Poland and America fought for each other since America was born. And once you actually dive into that history, you find that America and Poland really like their freedom a lot, and for good reason. A good reason, sorry. I think this should also explain to a lot of people why Poland is America's close ally. It's not just safety, it's the understanding of what freedom means and what it's worth. Well, Dexify, the U.S. was the first country to recognize modern Poland in 1919. And you mentioned Pulaski and Kościuszko. The latter, he was a colonel and then brigadier general in the U.S., well, they weren't the U.S. then, in the Continental Army. He was an architect and an engineer who, among other things, built up the defenses at West Point during the American Revolution. Pulaski died fighting in that war, actually. Side note, though, he had been sentenced to death by the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in absentia, which is too long a story for today, maybe another day. But this is important. His actions at the Battle of Brandywine in the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, saved George Washington's life and earned Pulaski promotion to brigadier general. Now, he was a cavalryman, and he died in, I think, 1779, but don't quote me on that. But yes, you are correct. There is a long history between Poland and the U.S., which is often overlooked or forgotten.
Under Hitler Youth Murder, Canadian Soldiers, War Against Humanity 109, 7 on the Line Productions commented, "There's a whole rabbit hole to go down about how does committing war crimes impact overall combat effectiveness. And in the case of the 12th SS, there wasn't a lot of battlefield adaptation going on when they first arrived in Normandy, but there was certainly a whole lot of killing of prisoners of war and an overall disdain for the troops they were facing, who had spent the last 2 years training for precisely this moment, integrating combined arms, preparing to accomplish their op orders for the landings and push inland. Within 3 months of combat, the unit virtually ceased to exist, and its commanders in Normandy either killed or captured in the campaign or during the pursuit afterwards. Kind of undercuts the whole SS were an elite force when their divisions were being rendered combat ineffective after 3 months in the field and demonstrating more bestial creativity at murdering unarmed opponents than actually accomplishing anything but holding ground in the name of the murderous totalitarian regime. Great work on the series, y'all." First of all, thank you for the kind words. Now, in my Reveries upon the Art of War, first published in 1757, General Marshal of France, Maurice de Saxe, also known as Hermann Moritz von Sachsen, wrote, "After the organization of troops, military discipline is the first matter that presents itself. It is the soul of armies. If it is not established with wisdom and maintained with unshakable resolution, you will have no soldiers. Regiments and armies will only be contemptible, armed mobs, more dangerous to their own country than to the enemy." Some 140 years later, in 1899, British Captain J.F. Daniell wrote an article in a leading military strategy and policy publication, the Royal United Service Institution Journal, titled "Discipline, Its Importance to an Armed Force and the Best Means of Promoting and Maintaining It." He posited that the great aim and object of all discipline is not only to maintain order and to ensure obedience and submission to authority, but also to produce and establish that cohesion between the individuals composing an army, which is essential if complete success is to be obtained in the operations in which it may happen to be engaged. Now, more recent research has shown that the them versus us mentality that needs to be in place for a unit to commit atrocities gets further cemented by the group committing atrocities. In other words, for a group to commit atrocities like this, they must have a shared idea setting the victims apart as the lesser other. Then, as they proceed to commit the atrocities, this increases the outside versus inside group identity. This in turn risks setting them apart even from their own comrades in arms in other units. In the case of the Waffen-SS, Reichswehr-SS Heinrich Himmler even wanted this to happen. He fueled their image as a group to their own above the rest. Now, it almost goes without saying that this is not the best way to keep a cohesive military force moving in the same direction. There are tons of incidents during more recent wars that verifies this effect, like when the Abu Ghraib prison atrocities sowed discord and division within the US Army in Iraq, resulting in operational failures in the field, or more recently when the Wagner Group in Ukraine took their special status as far as organizing an uprising against the military of their own side. Now, these are issues of discipline and cohesion, but we also know that committing atrocities on any scale, especially a mass scale like this, has serious negative impact on individual and group morale. The SS and Waffen-SS themselves provide countless examples of how the already soul-killing task of waging war becomes a weapon of mass destruction on the minds and souls committing mass murder. A dramatic increase in incoherent violence, battlefield depression, mental breakdowns, PTSD, substance abuse, and suicides are the result. Now, I am in no way saying that we should have pity on the Nazis for suffering while inflicting their terror. But when making a cold calculation of military advantage and combat effectiveness, this is of course not what a commander wants to see when trying to keep his force functional, and for that matter alive, to function at all. So, in summary, yes, you are right. Letting loose part of your force to just be barbarians is not a good path towards military success, often even likely to lead to them falling apart and being destroyed like the 12th SS pretty much was. Under Beria's Reward for Ethnic Cleansing, War Against Humanity 100, Pat Hutchinson wrote, "I want to point out something that is beautiful. It didn't come from the war against humanity, but it has come from this sharing of those events. We all know what a cesspool YouTube comment sections can be, and yet I scroll through these comments on this series and find people who care. They care about the victims of this terrible time. They care about making sure the memory lives on, that we never forget. Then there is what they don't care about. There is almost no discussions about politics. There are almost no personal attacks. This really seems to be a great community. I want you all to know that I feel a kinship to all of you, to the victims of this war, to the people who watch this series, and to the TimeGhost Army in general. It gives me faith in people, and I need that right now. Thank you." I can only agree with Pat to the fullest extent. It is an honor to be allowed to do this together with you all. Thank you. And on that note, I would like to thank all of you who have joined the TimeGhost Army, especially the many who answered our 1,000-man recruitment call last week. It is only together that we can overcome the hurdles we face to bring out our videos and share some knowledge of our ancestors' past success and failures so that we can learn from them to maybe forge a better future for ourselves and our descendants. If you haven't already, join us on timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Never forget.